So my name is Adrian Campomanes Alonso. I am a senior product marketing manager. As I said, I will be speaking about what the Peakon employee voice, and especially about two topics that I'm really, they're really close to my heart, which are basically employee engagement and active employee listening. So before we start about, the theory or thing like that, I think it would be very good to give some of the, practicalities as well of my presentation, our safe harbor statement. And this is very simple. For every presentation normally at Workday, we share sometimes some future-looking statements. And what we always say is, please, when you make any purchasing decision or any kind of decision, please base your decisions on services and products that are currently available. So now that we got that out of the way, so let's talk about employee engagement. So, and the difference as well between employee engagement and employee experience. So what is employee engagement? And this is very simple. That's the emotional commitment and connection to work. So in other words, in short, it's the commitment and the emotional connection that you have with your colleagues, with your actual role, and of course, with the wider organization. And why is important employee engagement? Because, and we'll see that in a few minutes with some numbers, but engaged employees are really important. Those are the employees that normally are the brand ambassadors that always talking about the company. They are, always giving the extra mile. And this is very important. Those are the kind of employees that actually will be working sometimes longer hours, and not because they have to, it's because they want to. And this is very important and has a lot of benefits for the employees himself or herself, for the organization, and most importantly, for your customers. So as it says here on the slide, is the kind of employees that bring their best self to work every day. Something that we need to, define and recognize is that sometimes in some presentations or online, you may see that people use employee engagement and employee experience in the same way, and actually it's not correct. They are not synonyms. Employee experience is the journey that an employee goes through out the work life cycle. For example, since they start the interviews, for example, to get recruited until they leave the organization. Within all that period, of course, we have many elements, like, for example, the systems they use, the processes, policies, etc. And this is the employee experience. But the employee engagement is the emotional connection, and we can even call it like the why, the quality, actually. So that's the emotional connection. So I think it's very important to define these two concepts before we move forward. So let's think, this is not a game, but just think, why employee engagement is important. So in a second, I'm going to show you some numbers, but just imagine you could go with your CEO, with your CFO, or or basically you will have to talk about the employee engagement within the organization, and you can say there are some things that I could do, sometimes from in this case from the HR department, to decrease turnover, increase productivity and profitability. So just close your eyes for 3 seconds and imagine what number or what percentage will move the needle and will be important for you to get, your policy or your program implemented. So let's start with these numbers. So organizations which have employee, very engaged employees, they have seen, for example, 24% reduction of turnover, up to 59% of reduction of turnover. So imagine how much money you could be saving. Because of course, when you are recruiting someone new, it takes time. Some people use external agencies, so they cost a lot of money. And once you get that person on board, it takes time, basically a lot of investment to get that person up and running. Imagine you went your sales person or your commercial department and say, actually, I can reduce absenteeism by 41%, in average, and increase productivity by 17%. So imagine how your commercial and sales department will be really, really jumping, saying, how can you do that? And most importantly for your stakeholders, your CEO, and you say the profitability can increase potentially up to 21%. And we have a better, customer relationship of 10%. This information comes from a very well-known organization, Gallup. And this is a study that says actually these people who are engaged, those are the benefits they bring into the organization. So just imagine if you could do that. So, but, it could be easy. And people say, yeah, let's get people engaged. But, this number, what is this number? 20%. Unfortunately, 20%, are the number of, the percentage of people who are actually engaged in your organization. So this is telling you something that we really, really need to stand out and say, what's going on here? In average, 20% of people are engaged. Those 20%, and those employees who are really, really engaged, always, leading and giving the extra mile. And those are actually, at the end of the day, the ones that sometimes, do the business, etc. So, the stars of the organization. So just imagine that you could increase that 20%. And and it's very simple. And just only you need to think about, for example, when you go to a shop and someone, you want to approach or discuss with someone and buy something, and that person on the sales floor, for example, is not engaged, doesn't give you the information, etc., and you don't feel welcome. What will happen? You will leave the business and you go maybe to buy the same article, the same item somewhere else. So that's, the repercussion of having someone that is not engaged. But, the good news is that there are ways of doing this. There's a strategy that I would like to present, which is actually, or is called active employee listening. And of course, we have a solution that will help you to do with your strategy. So it's very simple. So now I'm going to talk about 3 steps to launch this active employee listening strategy. So this is very important. So in your strategy, whatever you're doing, tool, etc., that you're using, we recommend Workday to focus on real-time employee feedback throughout the employee lifecycle. And this is very important because, we know there are some surveys, some tools that actually, ask for feedback, which is fine. But sometimes that feedback is not real-time. In many organizations, sometimes they ask for feedback once or twice a year. But what happens? They're big organizations, most of them, they gather all that information and they start analyzing it, etc. And by the time that information, that insight gets into the decision makers, it's already too late. It's been a few months and it's not relevant anymore. And those tools, or sometimes in some organizations, they ask the same questions to everyone. So, but let's recognize that in every organization, we have different type of people. Some are just starting their career, or they just started this job. Some of them are about to retire. Some of them are men, women, minorities, ethnic group minorities, etc. Different, stage of life. Some of them are married. Some of them are with children. So all these people are different, and we need to recognize that when you are, putting together your active employee listening strategy. The second element that we need to implement in this strategy, or activity that we recommend to do, is analyze your automated data. So, and this is very simple in terms of explanation. When you have 1, 2, or 3 employees, that's easy to analyze the data and do it properly. But what happens when you have hundreds or thousands of people? How can you really analyze the data that you are gathering? And most importantly, how can you personalize that? You say, okay, I have just a few employees. I can have these one-to-one conversations, and I can really understand what's going on. Yeah, that's fine when you have just a few employees. But when you have, 100 employees, 1,000 employees, you need to have a platform, a tool that actually do the job for you and will be automated. And most importantly, it's not taking a lot of time from HR. Because of course that sometimes goes on HR desk and then they have to do all this kind of work. And it's a lot of work when we're talking a few hundreds or thousands of employees. The third thing that you or we recommend to do is address employees' concerns and take action, and importantly, measure the progress. Something that people say like, oh, no, 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 I don't want to do employee service anymore because employees are tired of employee service. And I personally, deny this. I'm against that statement because employees are not tired of being asked feedback. They are tired of being asked feedback and see no action. And that's the reality. They get, those surveys. A few months afterwards, they might get to the decision makers, CEOs, etc., the board, and then sometimes nothing happens for many reasons. But of course, at the end of the day, employees are discouraged of taking part of those surveys, and they don't see any progress and say, why should I bother if no one is doing anything? So those are the three basically elements that we recommend in an active employee listening. As I said, the first one is capture real-time employee feedback throughout the employee life cycle, analyze and automate your data, and of course, really, really important, take action and measure progress. So this is what we recommend as an active employee listening strategy. So now let's talk about Workday Peakon Employee Voice. This is basically Workday Peakon Employee Voice is a continuous listening platform that captures real-time employee sentiment and encourages feedback. And really, really importantly, this solution provides personalized, and this is really important, this word, personalized action plans. So your managers and the organization have a plan to act upon. And this is really, really important. Something that is really important for you to remember is that Workday Peakon Employee Voice, of course, we're Workday, but it's a standalone product. And Workday Peakon Employee Voice, is 100% compatible with other HCM products, of course, Workday, but other products as well. So you don't need to have all the other products in order to implement your active employee listening strategy. So you have seen the market, there are other vendors talking about, listening to employees, which is fine. But today I would like really, really briefly to share with you some of our technology pillars and how we do things. And first one is, of course, intelligent listening. This is one of our technology pillars. The second one is total activation. And the third one is execution analytics. So intelligent listening. So the right question at the right time to the right person. This is very, very important. And this is about personalization. As I said, we are all different at different stage of our life, professional and private. So you need to be getting the right question at the right time. Because, for example, someone from sales, they shouldn't be getting the same questions as someone, for example, from marketing or HR. So that's one thing. The other thing is, it has to be a moment that matter. And something that we do in Workday is that no one gets the same survey. And why? Because the system is very intelligent. And actually, if I'm start, for example, providing feedback, negative feedback on, for example, my workload, the system will recognize that and then will be asking me more questions regarding that topic. So, to find out more. Something that is very important as well with Workday Peakon Employee Voice is that we just not only give a rating. Let's say, for example, from 1 to 10, I'm giving to my workload 4, which is a bad score. So what will happen if we only did that? What happens is that the managers will get, Adrian is not happy with his workload. It will be pointing the problem, but it doesn't tell you why. Here with our solution, we have a very advanced natural processing language. And actually, it will recognize what I'm saying about this, about my workload, so they can, we can surface the real problem, the why. And that might happen, for example, my workload is a problem that is within the entire team. So the system will recognize that the different element or the different participants of my team members have the same issue. And although we don't use the same words, workload, at the end of the day, it will surface what's going on. For example, if we're talking about workload, and maybe the manager said, well, they don't have too much projects. But actually, within our comment, when we're sharing this feedback, confidential feedback with our managers, they will realize that potentially we have too many meetings, too many webinars. So that might be the problem. And actually, we can find that out. So this is intelligent listening, having the right question at the right time to the right person, and you can surface the real problem rather than just only pointing, where the problem is. The second, technology pillar is total activation, and this is about driving adoption, collaboration, and action. How do we do this? Very simple. Having conversation. When we are sharing our feedback, our rating, sometimes our comment, we can start a confidential conversation with our manager. They, at the beginning, if we don't disclose who we are, they wouldn't know. And you can start having a conversation. Managers can acknowledge as well that they have seen your comment and they would take action upon. So that's start adoption. That helps with collaboration because actually the employee says, they're listening already to me. So that's not that bad. And of course, that will encourage as well to have, potentially, if the employee wants, a conversation with their manager in their one-to-one, for example. It's not just only, this solution is adapted, of course, for people working at their desk, but sometimes not everyone is working at the desk. So we have some customers that are retail, for example, and what we have is a kiosk, and actually people can go and add their feedback on a kiosk and actually share their feedback. And that's inclusion, not just only the people at their desk, but everyone. So again, it drives adoption, collaboration, and because you're having those conversations, you can have meaningful action at the end of the day. And finally, you got the feedback, then you need to analyze it. And how do we do this? There are many ways of doing it, but what we do is basically we correlate the engagement scores that we have, and we connect it to business KPIs. It could be revenue, absenteeism, retention, etc. So this is very important. You're saying how your engagement score is going up and down, and you can see the relationship between that engagement score and, of course, those business metrics that are very important. Because at the end of the day, we need to show that our programs, initiatives, etc., that we put in place are actually working. For example, we know that the economy is on every single newspaper today. Many countries are going to potentially in recession, cost of living crisis, etc. So one thing that you can save money is by retaining your employees, your talent. Because I said at the beginning, it costs a lot of money to recruit, and of course there is a loss of productivity, etc. So we have one tool here in the Peakon Employee Voice that actually can predict, attrition. And actually, a few months before that person actually leaves, the system will tell you this person, actually based on their comments, their ratings, etc., may be at risk of leaving the organization. So actually, this is something you can do. This is execution analytics. It's not just only, telling you where the problem is. It's telling you more information on how your engagement score is connected to the business KPIs, because of course that's very important that we need to track. So now what I would like to share with you, I have discussed now about active employee listening, those 3 steps. I gave you the pillars, technology pillars of the Peakon Employee Voice. Now, the next step I would like to share with you a small video when you will see a little bit the tool working, and of course some of their features. So I hope you enjoy it.
Adrian, it seems like we're not hearing the sound. Could you please check your settings so we could also hear what it said in the video?
place.
Yes.
Let's see how you measure up to your peers. True benchmarks let you compare your performance against real-world global and industry benchmarks. Easily see where you excel and dive into the areas that need a little more attention across employee experience, development, and reskilling, belonging, diversity, and more. Workday enables confidential two-way conversations between the manager and employee. What's more, we will automatically surface concerns, then help you address the issue directly with targeted action plans. To keep up with the rapid pace of change, you can accurately correlate engagement and D&I metrics to business KPIs, and attrition prediction helps you stay a step ahead of disruption. But it doesn't end there. You can use Workday journeys and custom cards to deliver personalized content to every person and further elevate the employee experience. Workday Peakon Employee Voice allows you to listen closer and act faster to keep your people happier. With a deeper understanding of people and the ability to create action plans, you can improve engagement and productivity. To find out more about Workday Peakon Employee Voice, visit workday.com/employee-voice.
Thank you very much, and apologies, I believe there was a slight sound issue at the beginning. So I will be sharing the link to this video. So if someone is interested, of course, in having the full experience and the sound at the beginning, you know, you will be able to do so. So apologies for that little technical issue. So so this is the end of the presentation on my side. So we can open up this to questions. So